In part one of this build series, you saw me install and mount the Dodge R5P7 in this thing. And yes, you're probably wondering, it is a Chevy body, but I have a Dodge engine. Why? Well, I got a really good deal on this Dodge engine, and it does the same thing when the hood is closed. This is a 2006 Chevy Monte Carlo that was formerly raced in the NASCAR Busch Series. I am racing it again after sitting for 15 years. In this video, you will see me finish getting the engine ready to run and firing it up for the first time. Been working here for a few days, doing a lot of different things. I was just figuring out where all the lines needed to go and marking everything. Some came with the car. I was able to kind of use them for reference to plot it out. Now I have everything marked, and yeah, my brain doesn't work correctly. This is decipherable with enough time, but I need to make another list to make it more readable than this one when I go to the counter. All these lines and fittings from Red Horse Performance, I use them on the Escalade and Uncle Rob. Basically been using Red Horse stuff since 2018. I wanted to do the biggest one first because I thought it would be fun, until I realized that we don't actually have a wrench big enough to do this, so we're gonna have to go to the store. But I have the upper rat hose mocked up anyway. I'm starting from the top and going down, so that way I know how things will look below it, and I know how I want it to look on the top, because I want it to look nice and not be haphazardly plumbed like whoever did this. That's just stupid. That's gonna have to go, but we'll worry about that later. And I'm probably gonna make new power steering lines, because I want them to be able to run out parallel and then go down. So this one needs to be a little shorter and have a straight fitting on the end, and this one also needs to be a little bit shorter so that it can come straight out of the pump and roll in without curving this way. I know some people might think that's really stupid, but those are the kind of things I notice when I look under the hood of a car. Whether somebody just picked lines out of a bin and they fit, they made the connection, or they put thought into how it was plumbed. And that is the difference maker between an engine bay that looks nice and an engine bay that looks thrown together. I don't want to have something that looks thrown together if I can control that. And if I'm making my own lines, I can control that to a certain extent. This is just how I like to do it. I like to make one side and then just kind of like, you know, hold it up there. Then I can figure out what angle I want this line to be at, which I don't want to push it all the way back here, because if I end up having to do some type of throttle bracket through here, then it would be in the way. So I kind of got to factor those things in also. But I also don't like whenever you have a straight fitting here and the line kind of runs flat and then has to bend at the last second to get into it. I like having it, you know, look like it's supposed to be that way. I've been trucking away on these here. Found a couple places down there where I might have some clearance issues, and I'll probably have to get some specialty lines made to make it work, because everything's got to fit under the header and all that. But other than that, it's going pretty good. Using this nice fire sleeve where needed. It's got fiberglass on the inside, silicone on the outside. Kind of gives us a little bit extra layer of protection too. And on the end, I don't know if you like me, but I hate the fiberglass itchies. So I'm doing these with heat shrink on the ends to keep the fiberglass, you know, from coming out looking ratty. A couple of the lines that were on the car were already like this, and I thought, dang, that's really nice, because I hate fiberglass itchies. It's just the worst. I am traumatized from that because of the downpipes on the Escalade. They ran like up through here real tight. I had to wrap them with that stuff, and every time I changed the transmission, I had to take them out. And those things, you touch them, and just go poof, and it's just like an infection. It takes like 3 days for that stuff to go away. Heat shrunk, heat resistant, and all that jazz. It doesn't weigh as little as the super expensive ones do, but you know, for what we're doing, that's okay. Now I have to take these 2-16 AN lines and run them back to the dry sump tank, but I don't have to have two lines going to it. There's one hard line under the car, and I can tee those two together to mate up with that one hard line. But to buy a -16 T fitting is like $100 something, so I'm just gonna make one. Got these weld-on bungs from ICT Billet. Use their stuff all the time, it's great. And got some aluminum from the metal place. Essentially I'm making a Y in that capacity, and trim this one side, gonna match it to the other side and see how far spaced out they are. We'll get them welded together, and then we'll cut the end off, weld all these on. I don't know, probably doesn't make any sense how I'm explaining that. It makes sense in my head, and that's what matters, because you'll see what happens when I'm done. That's what this video is for, right? You're gonna see what happens when I'm done. Well, I got them cut and tacked together. They're not quite exactly the same. Looks like this side has a little bit more whatever to it. You know, just some of that handmade charm, I guess. Without a jig or like a miter saw, it'd be pretty hard to cut this equally freehand. If anybody has some angle cutting tips, even if they're universally applicable for, like, heck, even doing flooring or something, I would love to hear about it, because that's something I'm not very good at yet. So, you know, I could see the hole looks about perfect. Look down in there. Nice big wall for the fluid to run into. I don't really like that, so I fixed it with one of these. One of my favorite tools, a little deburring tool. Use it on almost everything, and it's good enough with a fresh head to basically mill this out by hand. You can see how smooth this is. It looks great. Looks like a machine did it. And now I'm gonna put this on there. It's much better. Its radius won't be as turbulent. I haven't TIG welded aluminum in 2 years. I forgot what settings worked good on the welder. Pretty much just turned it on and let it rip. I think this is T6 too, which I believe most of the, yeah, T6, most of the aluminum tube I weld for turbo deal stuff is T4. I definitely had the wrong rod or something, because this thing just turned out like crap. I mean, this side looks okay. That's ugly. Had a blowout there. This side just looks terrible. And I had to leave these caps on here, because if you don't, the arc will jump off the threads and melt the threads off. But I didn't have them tight when I was doing this, in case you were wondering. And I could have just never showed it to you, but I want to be honest. You can see where the arc jumped off there, right there. And I think that's part of my problem, is the arc would wander and melt something else like that whenever I would start it, because I didn't have a good ground. I had my oil feed line going through a bulkhead adapter through my motor plate deal here. And you remember how when I put these holes in here, I was like, oh yeah, I'm making it light, looks nicer, whatever. Well, it turns out it actually serves a practical purpose. I can put that in there, and then to pull the motor, I would just have to take this 16 off the back and not have to touch anything on the pump, which makes life easier. But this rattled around in here. Took some aluminum pipe, sliced an end off, split it open, and put it in there to make a bit of a spacer. Now, this also reduces it from 16 to 12. Get this in here. There we go. Perfect. Now it doesn't rattle around. I can put the stop nut on the back and it'll be locked down. You gotta enjoy the little victories, because there are so many little defeats that they'll just piss you off relentlessly. Kind of like stabbing your fingers making AN lines with all the little, when you cut a line, all these little thingies come flying out, kamikaze, getting stuck under your fingernails and stuff. Anybody has any good stories about that, leave them in the comments. I'd love to read it. The oil system in here is pretty interesting. Took me a while to kind of cipher this out, because everybody does it different ways. So on the pump back there, that very back port, that is the pressure port that feeds the entire engine. I have the pressure running directly from the pump to the filter. So it hits the filter before it goes to the cooler. It goes from the filter, I hit my elbow. It goes from the filter to the cooler, out of the cooler to the pressure feed of the block. I haven't got around to changing this yet, but this T mechanism here, whatever came, this came with the motor, that feeds the valve cover ports that go to the spring oilers. Now from the dry sump tank back here, this line on the bottom goes to the feed port of the pressure port on the pump. and the return goes through another filter before it goes back into the tank at the top. These two hard lines go under the car to the bulkhead I made here. Snake down around the header, heat wrapped, make sure nothing gets going bad. Into the bottom here, gets pressurized out the top of the pump to the filter. And here are all the scavenge lines for the oil pan. We're already on the engine, thankfully. Don't have to make those. There's 3 in here. 2 of them are kind of joined together. And then I got 2 -16 lines that come out the top and go back to the tank. But because of space restrictions, it has to go up and over, which is less than desirable to make it look nice. But my little Y manifold block I made there turned out pretty good. And I found this line laying around to go up and over, down, and join those hard lines right there. Now I'm cutting out the lower radiator opening, and to do that I just marked off how high I wanted it to be off the ground, use the hole saw to make the ends, and now I'm using the little Milwaukee Ziz wheel to join the 2 holes to make a nice slot with rounded ends. And to measure this, I measured it to be parallel with the floor, the bottom of the air dam, not parallel with the grill, which is how that old Gibbs nose I had was configured, so that's what I referenced. Dang, lights is foggy. Better. Just realized I forgot to show what I was doing before I was done. Barely caught myself. I'm putting in the lower mesh screen here, and I'm again modeling it after that one because I know that way works. What I did, you can see what is left here, is I taped this whole perimeter, and I took calipers, I set them at 1/2 an inch or whatever, and I just kind of scribed a line the whole way around the tape. And then I marked top and bottom center, figured out where the end ones are going to go, measured the distance between them, divided that by 3, figured out it needed to be spaced 2.5 apart, so that's what I marked out on the tape, dots all around the perimeter. Then I drilled all those holes, and now I am riveting this in. And for the bottom ones, I'm using these backing washers so that it doesn't pull out with if it hits something, because these rivets will hold this screen in, but you know, if I hit a piece of debris or a big rock or something like that, that extra bit of holding in there would maybe keep this from busting out. I'm working on wiring right now, figuring out the whole wiring system that's in this car, how it works, if it does work. But first I have to take the distributor that's on this Dodge R5P7 engine I have and change the douche, I don't know, tell me what it is. I had to change the douche connectors to weather pack connectors to match what was on the car. I could have changed the car to douche connectors to match the distributor, but I figured I would stay with what was in the car because everything else in the car is standard weather pack deal. Really helpful to have a pin tool for this. Kind of fun making wires and making them look nice and pretty. Thankfully all the wiring in these cars is designed to be visible for inspection purposes. That makes tracing things really easy, and it's also mostly labeled so you know what everything is for, like coil B. I was messing with this for a while and I couldn't figure out why the little power light would not come on because I had the switch panel out, and then I figured out by accident that the little light bulb was grounded to this, and it only comes on when it has a ground, when it's actually screwed to the dashboard. If you take it off to look at the back of the switch, the light doesn't work. For a little bit I could not figure out why the ignition box switch power did not have power. I thought maybe something was broken. It wasn't. You just have to have the steering wheel kill switch plugged in. This is one circuit, so if this is unplugged, there's no power going to the boxes. That is how the kill switch works. This button interrupts the circuit that gives the ignition boxes power. If you didn't know, now you know. I'm using these MSD crimpers for this, and they're about the coolest thing I have ever used. They make stuff look like it came from the factory. Heck of a lot better than, you know, having experience with butt connectors and just squishing them with the squishy plier deal. This is real deal stuff. I highly recommend having one of these. Also, get you a box of weather pack connectors on standby. Got these ones from Mr. Gasket. just to have in your garage. You never know what you're going to be wiring up, like a, you know, a lot of people have light bars and stuff. There's so many things that you can do so much better if you have these tools at your disposal than just hardwiring something you have to cut out later. This pile right here is a perfect example of the time-consuming nonsense that has been tying me down. I wanted to change out the old master cylinders. I figured it'd be easier to get new ones and to rebuild them, so I got these. Was going to move the old reservoirs. Well, the thread depth is different. It's the same thread, but Tilton doesn't put their threads till the very bottom, so the reservoir I had did not work. I was able to find another one of these plastic ones, but they are too wide to fit next to each other, so I need to have one of them be smaller. Be this one. This will be the small one. Nowhere local has these laying around because most teams stopped using the individual ones. They had like a little bank that was mounted remotely, and I didn't want to go to that whole system. I don't want to get this done now, so I harvested the guts out of this thing that holds it together. It's just this bung that goes in there, threads into that. I thought, maybe I could modify the old billet one and put this in it. So pretend I didn't cut this already. That thread is not deep enough to go into my new master cylinder. So I thought I could just move that bung over to this thing. So I cut the old end of it off as evenly as I could with the portaband here. And I'm gonna make it as flat as I can to mate up with the O-ring, and I'll just put that bung into here and I'll have it perfect fit same day, and I don't have to spend any money, which is always a plus. Turned out pretty nice. It's even all the way across, be a nice surface for that O-ring to sit on. Now I'm gonna drill a hole and put it in. Worked out pretty good. Oh, how about that? Wow, can you hear that? Sounds like time and money saved. Now I'm working on putting together the fuel cell, and see, I had this out because it's going to get rotated, but I'll explain that later. The pickup in here, well, this cell has a built-in fuel pickup back here in the corner. You see, it's just got I threaded an O-ring base AN fitting into there, and it's got slots in the back. You can see it in the reflection. That's the pickup, which is pretty cool. I didn't know that was in there until we took the foam out and found it. I thought I was going to have to build something, but you cannot submerge regular line into gasoline, ethanol, whatever it is, because it'll eat it. So we got this special submersible fuel hose here, just for mock-up purposes. Essentially, it'll be like that. I got to put all the rest of the foam back in. This will go on there, and this is just the bladder without the cell. I have to fold that up like a pretzel and jam it through that hole and then unfold it and put everything together. That'll be fun. Took a while playing Tetris with the foam to get something in here that made relative sense once the line is in, and that goes down in there. But it probably took me like 5 minutes to wrestle this fuel cell bladder through this hole, and I probably should have filmed it, but I didn't. And if I did, it would have looked like a monkey on a football, because if you've ever done this before, which I'm sure a lot of you have, it's not easy to do, and I don't know if there is like a right way to do it. If there is, please let me know. And the fuel system couldn't be more simple. It's basically the same as any other carbureted muscle car. It's got the pickup in the cell that we showed you. Comes out of here into a filter, through the firewall here, the rear firewall, whatever, there's a separate name for that, I don't know. And it goes through this hard line, pops out down there. I ran it up here, straight into the fuel pump, the mechanical fuel pump, same as any other old hot rod. And I chose to run the lines this way. This is because this is how they were when I got the car. I figure if that's where the Gibbs car builders decided to put that, there's probably a good reason for it. So I use the same configuration when it comes to what bars it goes under and over. And this is the kind of stuff that separates people who show up with their helmets in a bag and drive their car and don't know anything about it. When I'm driving this car, I will know this car. And this sounds stupid. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I feel like whenever you have a significant amount of time invested into a machine and you're using it, you have a different type of connection with it. And I don't know if that's a Maybe there's more to it than a mental thing. I don't know. I just know that it exists. I could have bought a running driving car for about the same amount of money that I have invested into this one right now. A running driving car of a really good caliber would be about the same as what I'm going to end up with. But I would have none of the lessons and knowledge about the car that I have gained during this process, including all of the research for the component selection, the explanations from guys like Doug, why you need this rear end, why it does that, what it makes the car do, why certain things are better than others in certain applications. All that stuff is now in my head, and there's no better classroom to learn that than in a practical application. I could sit there and listen to somebody say it, but when I'm picking it out to put it on my own car, it gets engraved on the brain wall a little bit differently. Right now I'm figuring out how to get the boom tube hooked up. That's a bit of a fun process because this car is a 105-inch wheelbase car, and I believe all of the exhaust systems I have are for 110 or 110-inch cup car or 112-inch truck. So we have a little bit of clearance problem. This is the particular one I want to use. I like the way it looks. I like this Y-pipe setup. So I had to go under here and I had to cut out the transmission cross member, which wasn't being used anymore anyway because I have the mid plates being used up there. You either want to use the mid plate or use the tail shaft cross member, not both, because if you have it anchored in 3 places you could end up cracking the transmission or the bell housing. That's not good. So usually, I mean, cross members are old school. I mean, like old school. They don't even, most cars don't even come with them anymore. It's actually kind of surprising that this one still has them. They're kind of like early 2000s stuff. But anyway, mine is gone now, and I'm working on figuring out how much I need to trim the secondaries off of these collectors to fit into here. And this is where the extra distance comes from. Usually the secondaries on these collectors do not need to be this long. For what we're doing here with the short track stuff, making them short to fit in there is not gonna hurt anything. I mean, I'm already running a restrictor and it'll still want to blow the tires off, so we're not fighting for horsepower here. It's not like a super critical thing to have an extra 2 horsepower or something. It's more critical to have the car handle and turn properly. We're getting ready to see if this thing will run. I am excited and also nervous because I don't know if I wired that distributor right or if it works, or I mean, it should work, but still, you're nervous. Got fuel in it. I gotta put the carburetor on, hook up the plug wires. I'm gonna do that while the oil is heating up. Once it's warm, then I will prime it. Hopefully get some fuel to the carburetor and see if this thing will run. Yeah, the seat's not mounted or anything yet. Ron Hornaday said, I told him I was getting close to making it run. He said, get it to fire up, then we'll bring it over to my shop and have the rest of it done in a day. We'll take it to his shop to do the seat. So now I'm gonna bump it over and hope it works. At least the distributor. I'm gonna check. There should be a red light that comes on and blinks while this is spinning, and because distributors has an optical pickup, that is the status indicator. I do not know if it works yet because I have not tried to. I've bumped the starter, but I haven't tried to let the motor spin because the top was taped up. Now it's not going to fire off because there's no fuel in the carburetor, but this will also help get some prime to the pump. See, blinking. That means it's good. I was able to prime the supply line. Oh yeah. And I checked, I cracked the supply line down here and fuel came out. So it is primed to the pump. I could have filled the bowls in the carburetor beforehand, but I wasn't thinking. I got excited. I put it all in the tank. I don't actually have any more fuel to put into the bowls right now, so that's great. I better go get Logan, or she's going to be mad if I start this and she's not here for it. Well, it's primed. There is fuel in the bowls. I just got to turn the ignition on and see if it makes noise. If it makes noise, I'm going to turn it right back off, because I don't want to get gassed out in here. Just want to make sure that it will light off. Alright, let's see if it works. I guess I gotta turn the power on. Forgot I was responsible and turned it off. Ignition's on. Let's see if it does it. It runs. Yes. See, there you go. That felt good. I can't put words together, but that felt good. Whew. This side might feel a little higher.
It is. Finally got a seat in there?
Yep.
All right, take it home now. Hey, were you drinking when you drove these holes? I don't know if this thing's low on water the way that pump's running, I don't know.
Yeah, that buzzing sounded strange to me, but I figure this thing's enormous. I don't know what noise it's supposed to make.
Yeah, I just started that. Right. Kind of like gave me this thing. Let's get that rolling with it. Cool.
Why is it so big?
But they used to be, bud.